Hey everybody, this is Minion Soldier, and this is going to be like a ship updates Piracy show crossover event. So we're going to deal with the ship updates first, relating to the 3.0 production schedule, all the information in regards to ships in that, and then we're going to move on to the Piracy show after that and do comments, concerns from the last ship updates video, and some commentary of my own. And then, close things out. So, without any further ado, let's get started. Now, we're going to start off by talking about ships in the chronological order of their expected delivery. So that's the date that they're expected to be delivered or completed by CIG in the next year and somewhat beyond for certain ships. First up is the Prospector, which has an expected delivery date of May the 5th, 2017. So very, very shortly, this ship should be completed and ready for 3.0. Next up is the Drake Dragonfly, which arguably is already complete, but there's probably just a little bit of finishing touches that they have to put on it to make sure you can land it on a ship, deploy it on the ground without any fuss for 3.0. And that has an expected delivery date of May the 12th, 2017. After that, we will be getting the Constellation Aquila, which is also slated for delivery on May the 12th. Now, after that, obviously, a vehicle that is crucial to planetary exploration, certainly in 3.0, is the Ursa rover, which is slated for completion on May the 26th. Also slated for completion on the 26th is the Drake Cutlass Black. So finally, the ship that can deploy a Dragonfly on the ground. The brand new model of the Cutlass should be finished by May the 26th. Now on June 9th, the rework of the RSI Aurora is going to be completed. So that ship, of course, already in game, but the refactor of this ship should be finished in time for 3.0. On June the 12th, the Misk Razor is supposed to be finished, and so that ship will also hopefully be included in 3.0. Now, the Cutlass Red is slated for July the 5th, so possibly if 3.0 gets delayed, this ship could make it in, but once again, they haven't technically begun this yet, as they are only slated to begin I keep wanting to say the Constellation Red. The Cutlass Red is slated to begin on May the 3rd. Now, shortly thereafter, approximately a month, the goal is to have the Cutlass Blue finished on August the 2nd. Now, that ship, of course, will only be going into production on June the 1st, so unless there's a major delay in 3.0, chances are that ship will not be included in 3.0's initial release, though it could be patched in later, I suppose. On August the 4th, the Vanguard Harbinger is scheduled for completion, and it should begin on June the 5th of this year. Now, on August the 10th, the Hull C is slated for completion, so obviously not going to make it into 3.0. But shortly thereafter, hopefully, those of you that own the Hull C will, of course, get your hands on your ship. Next up is the Connie Taurus, which is, of course, the base version of the Constellation, and that is slated for August the 31st. Now, the Vanguard Sentinel, which is, of course, the E-War variant of the Vanguard, and a ship that I'm still, I still kind of got my eye on because I want to see what E-War does, but the ship itself, whether or not E-War will be completed is another thing, but the ship itself will be, is slated for completion on September the 4th. Now, on September the 6th, of course, finally, the Reclaimer is scheduled for completion. Very, very excited for that date. Next up, on September the 8th, is, of course, the Freelancer Dur and the Freelancer Max, which are both the exploration version and the kind of maxed out commercial transport version of the Freelancer, aka the Chrome Turd. Next up the Constellation Phoenix, slated for October the 5th. And this would be the final variant of the Constellation I was going to say family. So all these ships would be done at this point. Now, finishing off the year is the Anvil Hurricane, which is slated for December the 11th. Now, going into next year, on March the 23rd, the 890 jump is slated for completion. And also included in that was the fact that this March 23rd just passed is when the 890 jump went into production. So the 890 jump is already on its way. I almost don't want to say it because it's almost too good to be true. The Banu Merchantman, May 1st, 2018, the Banu Merchantman is supposed to be completed with an expected start date of October 2nd of this year. And finally, the Anvil Carrack, aka the ship that you all melted for a Polaris, months ago, is expected to be delivered on May the 8th, 2018, or rather expected to be completed, with an expected starting date of November the 6th of this year, I guess. Now, beyond that, the production schedule, of course, goes into a lot of systems, a lot of environmental ideas. There's a lot of performance improvements that are expected to make it into 3.0. And even though the Anvil Hurricane is not slated to be completed until December the 11th, the turret improvements that ship spurned on because of its, I guess, lukewarm reception by the community are expected to be included in 3.0. So those are all, some really great things. Now, of course, there's a ton of other stuff in the production report and the schedule for the rest of this year and going into next. So there's a lot of great things to read in there and a lot of stuff beyond ships. I mean, the performance improvements, the list alone was more than welcome. And I can't wait to see, and hopefully that all gets delivered with 3.0, which is slated for the end of June, which is odd because, I remember there was a guy on YouTube who kept saying that it was going to be June or into the summer. Oh man, what was his name? Kind of an asshole. What was his name again? I can't remember. Anyway. Now, of course, there were some notable MIAs on that list. The Redeemer, of course, was not present on that list. Also, the Crucible. That was kind of a head scratcher that ship wasn't on the list at all. But I guess, they do kind of have a really full plate there. So it's understandable. It's just I felt that, like a repair ship would probably be something that would be kind of critical moving into the future. So I was surprised to not even see it starting production, at least this year. So that was kind of a head scratcher. And another ship kind of stuck out. Now, one of the ships that wasn't on the production schedule that was kind of noteworthy was the Polaris. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who have, bought a Polaris, who backed in, I guess, on this ship and are kind of wondering, hey, how come the Polaris isn't there? And I guess that in a certain respect, I mean, I'm going to kind of attack this question because I know that there have been a few people who have talked about this and who've asked about, when's the Polaris going to happen? And, obviously when the production schedule comes out, there's noteworthy ships that are absent and you kind of go, oh, hey, why isn't the Polaris on there? And, on ship updates, I kind of, asked the question about the Javelin and the Idris and would it even be possible for them to be in 3.0? And then I kind of shot that down. I said, here's some reasons why they might put them in, but overall, no. It's just not that time yet. And with the Polaris, I mean, there are a few arguments that you could make for the Polaris. Now, the Polaris is a big ship. It's a marquee ship. It is the smallest of the military capitals, and the capital lineup for the UEE, the United Earth Empire, is you got that one, or the super big dreadnought ship that we've only seen distant screenshots of. You have the Bengal carrier, and then you have the Idris, and then you have the Javelin. And the Idris and the Javelins are the only ones that you can own, or at least buy, right? The Polaris is the smallest of those like military capital ships, and so the Polaris is unique. It's a ship that you could bring into game, and there aren't any systems that you would really have to go too far to create to get the ship going in the game as it stands. I mean, it's a combat ship. It's not a salvager. It's not a miner. It's not a repair ship. So you don't have to worry about any extraneous mechanics like that. So, I mean, it would kind of fit into the basic format that we have now. And so you could sort of say, hey, why aren't they putting the Polaris into production yet? And I'm sure there are people who own this ship who are asking that question right now. Why isn't it in production? You have a history of, with very popular ships, or ships that have certainly garnered a lot of positive attention from the community, of kind of pushing these to the front of the line. Why haven't you done that with the Polaris? And I understand that point of view, but once again, I'm going to kind of turn it around and shoot that down. But I'm going to do it kind of, hopefully in a very gentle way that'll make sense to those of you who want your Polaris right away. Simply put, the game is just not there yet to accommodate a ship like this. You could essentially, like in one of the instances that we have now, which is up to 24 people, you could essentially take everyone on that server, crew out a Polaris, and that would be it. That would be everyone on the server, all on one ship. And what would you really do? I mean, yeah, you'd be able to go fly around and get in the turrets and shoot a few pirate ships, but there really wouldn't be much for you to do, and it would be something that you would get bored with very quickly. I mean, when I got my Caterpillar, I was super excited for my Caterpillar. I was like, yes, my Caterpillar, finally. But I quickly kind of got to that point where it's like, okay, but I want to put some dragonflies on my Caterpillar, and I want to land it on a planet, and I want to tool around, and I want to get a whole bunch of people on it, and I want to steal some cargo, but there's no cargo really, blah, blah, blah. And so as much as people might want their Polarises right now, the game just isn't there yet, It's not even like a question of, well, could the networks handle it? Could the graphics cards handle it? Blah, 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 blah. It's a question of, like, there just wouldn't be anything to do. I mean, even with 3.0, there's going to be a whole bunch of, like, new missions, hopefully, and new things to do. But for something on the scale of the Polaris, it's just, I don't feel that the game is in a position right now to do the Polaris justice. And I think it's the same with the Idris and the Javelin. The game is just not in a state to do these ships justice. They wouldn't be right now. And I know that's going to be a disappointing thing for some people to hear. But I think that we can all agree that once we have a few systems, once things have been worked out, once we're able to join into games with our friends and not get randomly thrown to different instances, and once we're in a place where, random people just can't walk onto our ships and so on and so forth, I think once the game is there, the game will be ready for a ship like the Polaris, and the Polaris will be, a welcome addition to the game at that time. All right, and now we are going to proceed with the Piracy Show. Questions, comments, concerns from last week's ship updates. So let's get started. Neo Onyx. Hey, Minion Soldier, is
there a real issue with limited ships if CIG continues to stress that every ship is available in game? My thinking is that even if the ship costs some insane amount of credits, it is still available. True. One of the things, they've always said it, that all these ships, you can buy them for credits in game. Even like Van Duel ships and whatnot, you can steal them, you can possibly buy them. There might be a market in that, going out and stealing Van Duel ships and parting them out or selling them as a whole. Just saying, possible suggestion for people out there. The thing of it is I know there's a lot of people who are have their hearts set on these capital ships, who are very excited about them. And when these sales come up and they're limited, it kind of breaks their heart. But it also, in truth, it also kind of puts the brakes on some people, maybe spending a little too much money, so to speak, which it might not be a bad thing. But at the same time, one of the arguments I can see for, or at least against that type of sale is that, when you're selling a ship like that, you're not just selling a ship, you're selling infrastructure to a group or to a person. And that infrastructure enables them to take on, possibly bigger missions, higher rewards, things like that. And so I don't really think there's a perfect answer to this question. But I know that, I understand why people get upset that they can't buy these things when, either they have the cash or the ambition to do so. I can understand why they get upset. And so even though that it's going to be available in game, it's just like some people who have these ships, if these ships really do get to a point where they've fulfilled their vision, where they've fulfilled the idea behind them, and they're really so amazing, that I can see why some people would be upset that it's going to take them that much longer to get their hands on it versus the people who lucked out and got them very early on. All right, next up, Bjorn Kuma 8877. The real argument against their inclusion in 3.0 is the netcode. 3.0 is going to be a lot at once, and they may just be too heavy on the bandwidth with all that new info flying around. My guess, it will be after some cleanup time on 3.0 and stability work after its intro. We need that Delta Patcher. Yes, we do need that Delta Patcher. Light a fire under that shit, please. 30 gigs every time? Come on. Well, it's probably, with 3.0, it's going to be a lot more than 30 gigs. Let's be real. Yeah, the game just isn't there yet for these ships, I think what I was... it's one of the ways I kind of argue with people sometimes is I try to sell them on what they're, what they're saying or what they want. And then I kind of say, and I introduce complications along the way to kind of steer them back away from it. Sometimes it's something I just do from time to time. And that's kind of how I feel. Even though it would be really cool to see them and, it's obviously to mess around with it, there just wouldn't be a game, not even so much as the netcode, but there just wouldn't be anything for them to do really in the PU for a long time to come. So yeah, I just can't see it. And yeah, the netcode, that's a great point. I mean, yeah, I mean, you put everybody on a Polaris, I was going to say, on an Idris, on a Javelin, yeah, you've got the whole server on one ship and nothing to do. So yeah. All right, Devil Con, third, Javelin, Idris, and Polaris. Oh, is that the Polaris? Or is that third comment on the video? Or, yeah, not quite sure where we're going, but yeah. All right. All right, Cafio. I think the Idris has been ready for a while. It's why they use the Idris as a style guide to make the Javelin. Yeah, we heard about flight testing on the Idris last year in January, February, around-ish. So, yeah, the Idris, I think, has been ready for a while. I mean, they've even had a chance to do, damage states. I mean, we saw that Idris that had been crashed on a planet, which... I don't know, might be a plot point in Squadron 42, who knows, but yeah, it's The Idris has been around for a while, and I think, the fact that we see a Javelin now all thrashed up and crashed on a planet, the Javelin's probably been done for a while as well, too. So that's probably where ships like the Reclaimer kind of came in, is right around probably when the Javelin was officially complete. All right, Mr. Madman USA. I look at the capital ships as doing missions against Vanduul primarily. I don't see any other factions having capital ships. I can see them having these combat operations in zones where heavy Vanduul activity is. So there will be military-style missions that will be very difficult and require large capital ships and fleets to complete. This system may also... Whoa. Okay, yeah, I don't know if they cut you off, or because I'm not seeing a second comment. All right, well, I kind of see where you're going. Yeah, like, once again, when I was talking about the Polaris earlier, and of course the Idris and the Javelin, I really hope that they create a mission system around these big ships that allows players to share the experience of being on them and to share the rewards somewhat with their crewmates, once they recoup expenses. I would love to see a mission system like that. One of the greatest things in recent memory in gaming that I participated in was the pre-launch event for Legion in World of Warcraft, where the Burning Legion was sending down invasions in various parts of the world. And, players were running around trying to defeat all these different invasions all over the Eastern Kingdoms and Kalimdor. And so what was happening is in between, one invasion to the next, to the next, to the next, you would just see these fleets of players flying through the air from Ajara to the Barrens, all the way down to, Tanarus, past 1,000 Needles. Just these fleets of players flying through the air on their mounts, and you saw every mount in the game. It was crazy. I mean, I could list them for hours, but every possible flying mount you could think of, you saw for the first time in a long time. You saw all this, and just tons and tons of players flying through the sky, and it was just such a wonderful experience to see. And to participate in, and to bring back all the memories of, I remember when that thing dropped and I rolled a 1 on it and I never got that mount, blah, blah, blah. It was really, really cool. And so in Star Citizen, I'd like to see something like that, I'd like to see players being able to join up in fleets and fight these big battles together in these random dynamic events, Vanduul invasions here, there, and everywhere. And I think that ships like the Javelin, the Idris, the Polaris, and other ships as well, the Carrack, and maybe even some civilian ships that could be repurposed, possibly a Caterpillar, could participate in events like this, and you could have these big space battles. I think it would just be amazing, and hopefully there's a mission system in the game that it could accommodate something like that. I think if you put something like that in Star Citizen, it would just that would be it. It would just be it wouldn't just be a video game. It would be the game. Especially for, sci-fi fans like ourselves, whether you're a Star Wars or Star Trek or both or whatever fan, I think it would just be such a complete and such an amazing experience. All right, Barney Granero. The practical use you have for a Javelin as a pirate is the fun you could have trying to board one. As a side note, EA reaffirmed today why backing Star Citizen is worthwhile. EA released the trailer for Star Wars Battlefront 2. Oh yeah, okay, yeah, for which an extra $60 contains all the content that Battlefront 1 should have included. Oh my god, yeah, it's so true. For less than $50 when I backed it, Star Citizen will have everything Battlefront has, plus with an MMO included where I can do anything I want, and no split player base via DLCs. Yes, and that's one of the reasons why, even though I have all these little qualms and little, say divergent opinions with certain things that CIG does, this is the main reason why I back Star Citizen, is it's time to stop playing with these silly little ideas, and it's time to start going for the big ideas. And that's what Star Citizen is doing. And even though I get frustrated, and I'm sure a lot of people do from time to time with CIG, the spirit of what Star Citizen is what I'm backing, is what I'm supporting. And what I am most interested in is the big wide world, and no longer being limited to just little levels and little play areas, you know? Just a much more expansive and a much bigger world. Can't wait. But in terms of like the practical use for a javelin, I don't know that I would ever really try to board a javelin. My main aim as a pirate is going to be pirating in such a way as to just kind of make ships disappear off the map, and to otherwise be unknown and unseen for most of the time that I would be, out pirating. Is just to be the unknown quantity that, you might be looking at your scanner and say, oh, I saw an NPC Orion over in that asteroid belt 30 minutes ago, and then you go to that belt and maybe there's just a little bit of debris left over and the Orion is gone. That would be my ambition as a pirate. And directly engaging a javelin, I don't know that it would be really worth my while in terms of risk and cost analysis. So, yeah. But yeah, for what I was trying to express is that as a pirate, I don't see myself ever flying a javelin, even if I could afford one, just because I think it would be just a little too obvious and a little too out there and too easy to see and spot. All right, next up, Jennifer Royal. I have a javelin and an Idris P. Had a Polaris, but melted it. I think they are holding them for Squadron 42. Yeah. That's what I would do if I were CIG-CR. By the way, my main reason to get a javelin was basically so I could brag that I had one. It was a total impulse purchase. Well, ooh, okay. Well, hey, you know what? At least you said it out front. But who knows? With a really robust mission system, you might find that might be a very purposeful ship to have, and not just what was initially an impulse purchase might actually end up being a good buy for you in the long term. Once again, if there is the facilities and the infrastructure to facilitate that type of operation in the future. Ethan Campbell. All right. They've already stated that they didn't intend to release anything larger than a Caterpillar Starfarer until the netcode supported at least 2 of these with full crew fluidly. We're nowhere near this point. It's not a focus of 3.0. They would not want to mess up the release of such iconic units, so it won't be there. Yeah, and that's true. I mean, that's also true, is that, these ships are kind of iconic. If they came out and they were just kind of like blah, and there wasn't anything to do, that wouldn't look too good. So yeah, that's another reason why they would hold it back, obviously. Sadly. Devin Sharkey. So the Redeemer is not on the production schedule. Oh, you noticed that too. And that includes the schedule for the next year. I'm sure Ben Lesnick knew that during Quantum Questions this past Monday. I'm glad they are considering my $250 contribution to the game a big joke. I'm not sure if I can like that guy less. That's the thing is, I know there are people out there who kind of hate on the Redeemer and like, oh, well, the Redeemer's ugly, blah, 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 blah. But irregardless of any ship that had won, just imagine for a second that the ship that you wanted out of the next great starship won. Like, whether it's the Scimitar or what is it? Oh man, the Brutus was the Drake one, I think. But whichever, just picture in your mind that ship having won, and now having it been delayed this many times. I mean, the artist who was responsible for it, Paul DeLacy, I think the last thing he did was the 85X, and then he left the company. And they still haven't done his ship, and it's not even on the production schedule. And irregardless of how people feel about the appearance of the Redeemer, the functionality is definitely there on a ship like that, and especially with planetary landings and all that. I I can't understand why that ship is not in production. It's unfathomable that that ship is not in production and on this schedule. It just doesn't make any sense. And I mean, I know there are people who hate the ship, but once again, just imagine it was the Scimitar, imagine it was the Brutus or whatever. It's inconceivable that with the stuff that we have coming online, that those ships in whatever incarnation would not be here. That's kind of one of those things that's just like, what? But, you know, once again, not a decision maker. Just like to sit on the sidelines and run my mouth. All right, next one. Erankle. I don't think the Javelin will be in 3.0. Always remember that the condition they put them out, two of them must be able to fight each other with support crafts. Imagine 5 Starfarer with fighter full crewed fighting. Well, then when this happened, we might be able to see capital ships, so we are quite far. Yeah. And I mean, yeah, like the netcode and the basic infrastructure issues aside, I mean, even if you could create like a private level to just mess around with the ship and test it out, like there just really wouldn't be anything to do with the ships to really facilitate that, like them being there. All right, next one. Sempiternus. Oh, they built them, but now they need to tear them down. I forgot that what I was watching recently, probably a subscriber town hall, where Lando jokingly brought up the damage states on the Idris and Javelin to a table of vehicle artists. It was met with groans, and it is apparently a monumental task. I kind of wish that they would go back to doing a hangar-ready release for ships like that. I don't know if there's a hangar in the game that could accommodate those ships. As far as damage states, I think that they're done. I think that, because that would technically, you would probably still see damaged Idrises and damaged Javelins in Squadron 42. So I think that the damage states would probably, I think we can probably take as writ that those are finished on those ships. I'm not sure. I don't know for sure, but I think that would be, safe. The Canadian Will, LOL Minion. Okay. Alan Crow. Man, with all the content they have been showing, it feels like the light of 3.0 is at our fingertips. Looking at the production schedule, if it's anything like the last one, we won't see it till December. After watching this week's ATV, I'm thinking, man, this game is about to explode with content. Then I look at the production schedule and all hopes get lost again. I think for the time being, a lot of the content is still going to be player driven. I get what you're kind of saying, and I understand what you're trying to say in that, like the universe we're going to have delivered to us very soon, there's not going to be a lot going on in that universe, you know, in the 3.0 universe. There's going to be some mission givers, and there'll probably be some dynamic content, but there's no one really to kind of fully flesh that world out and make all the stuff. And there's other stations, there's other landing zones to come. So there's really not going to be a lot in the way of CIG driven content. I think it's going to be mostly, a lot of the enjoyment coming out of 3.0 is going to be mostly players tooling around on the planets and exploring, you know, these new vistas, and hopefully some good missions or 1 or 2 missions here or there. I think the guy from the Gamescom video, I forget his name, but the guy who appeared and he gave you that mission, then he double crossed you at the end, I think he's supposed to be in 3.0. I think I remember seeing that in the notes, and so he'll hopefully be there to give us a few missions and give us some stuff to tide us over, but a lot of it is still going to be player driven. Actual, like, full-on content missions and stuff like that is probably still going to be a while away. It really, really is. But yeah, I think the real big hope for a lot of people is Squadron 42 this year. And once that's done, hopefully that means that all those people who are working on finishing up the missions for Squadron 42, finishing up the characters and the animations, can then go into the mission system and the characters and the animations for the PU and start to flesh that out. Right now, I think the real step forward is building the universe right now, and the jog accelerating almost to a sprint of getting all these ships finished. And so the actual, the content, the story-driven content in the game that will bind all of this together and make a living, breathing universe, I think that's still, it's still a little ways down the road. But there are a lot of cool ships that are coming out, which in and of itself is pretty, I think, for me, pretty exciting. Citizen Gamer. Good show as always, Minion Soldier. Thank you, dude. I don't know if you own or have access to a Polaris. I definitely have access to one. But if you need footage when it comes out, you know where to find me. Yeah, don't worry. I once we have like a system in place where we can officially go and like visit people's ships and stuff like that, and once like some of the ships turn up that I don't have access to, I'm definitely going to be like hooking up with other people and exploring their ships and making videos about that in the future. Alright, next up, Black Dream Hunk 2. Guess what ship I own? The Polaris. If I wanted, I could have owned an Idris or a Javelin, but too big. Yeah, well, the Polaris I think is like the entry-level capital, the Corvette. So honestly, I think it's that middle zone. I think it's more of like, if you look at ships like the Carrack, ships like the Connie, the 890 Jump, I think it's the upper echelon of those ships, and it's not quite in the capital portion of the world so much. I think it's more like a fast attack boat, or like comparing a PT boat to a destroyer, really. I think that would probably be a bit more apt, not in terms of scale, but in terms of capability. I think that would be a better comparison. But yeah, I think I see what you're saying. All right, Our Graceful. Where's the 3.0 production schedule? Oh, this was, you made this when ship updates first came out. Yeah, it should be in your inbox, dude. Check your inbox. There should be an email from RSI. It might have gotten tossed in your spam folder. And there's a whole production schedule there. It's just before you sit down and start trying to read it, get yourself a drink and a smoke or food or whatever, because you're going to be there a while. It's pretty deep. And finally, X-Hammy. 2 down, 1 to go. Excuse me, have you met our Lord and Savior, the Bengal Carrier? Yes, but you cannot buy a Bengal Carrier, my friend. So, yeah, still 2 down, 1 to go, in my opinion. So that is it for comments and questions. I'm still kind of wrestling with the idea of what to do with my fighters, if to do anything at all. I'm still looking at the Buccaneers and thinking, what if I just take my fighters, melt them down, reforge them into Buccaneers, and then just put some NPCs in them and just say, guard my shit. If someone attacks me, run interference. Just annoy them and pester them so they have one extra complication to deal with when they're trying to attack me, if they're trying to attack me. That sort of thing. That's, and they're Buccaneers, so supposedly very low cost to maintain and in a way disposable. So I'm kind of wondering if that's the way I'm going to go with that. The possibility is still there, but I think that once again, when we're talking about game systems coming online and stuff like that to support different ships, one of the things that I would need to see in order, I think, to make a final judgment call on that is the NPC control, wingman control system. To understand how robust is it going to be before I make a decision along those lines. Could I basically use voice commands and just basically say, let's say I have 3 Buccaneers, Larry, Curly, and Mo, and or whatever, Red Squadron, and I just say, Red, here's my target, Red Squadron, attack my target. Can I just do that? Or is it like this whole thing where I have to select them each individually through some interface, which I'm sure will be groundbreaking and 3D and really complex and cumbersome, and and kind of go attack this guy, blah blah blah, and do so in a defensive way, do so in an evasive way, all the different possibilities. I want to see that system before I make a decision on that end. I really, really do. So I'm going to kind of hang on to my Saber and Super Hornet for now and just say there's a possibility in the future that those two ships could be something that I simply acquire in the PU along the way. But yeah, that is about it for the show this week. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Once again, hope I didn't throw anybody too far off when I was talking about the Javelin and the Idris in 3.0. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the show, and thanks for watching.
Quantum travel initiated.